On the sheet there, I said that these were 2 by 2 by 2.5. You can make them any size you want, but the height should be 20% more than the square. I use a 5/8 diameter Forstner bit in here first, and the reason I do that somewhere I have a jam chuck. You want to make yourself a jam chuck, and on the sheet there's dimensions for the taper. These jam chucks are great. You can use them for a lot of different things. But you drill your 5/8 hole, and then with the center of the Forstner bit, it's easy to pick up and drill a 1/4-inch hole. Whoops. You can see it. You should be able to focus on it. There you go. There I am. It's easy to drill a 1/4-inch hole in there. And you need that hole for a couple of things. One for centering, and then the other one, when you get it on the chuck, sometimes it gets stuck and you got to pound the jam chuck out. Be careful when you're making these that you don't split the wood. They can go flying on you easily. Your V can come out to the ends, and if it does, you're going to have a shorter, more open flower. And I'm sorry, I don't. If and if you bring them in about a 1/2 inch, the flower will be more closed. That center hole also helps to center the piece of wood.
Hey, Paul, go out a little bit on the top. We're too far. No. There you go.
What kind of wood, Mike?
Anything you want. The beauty of these flowers, before I even turn that, the beauty of these flowers is that, I can't aim this one. You got it on that one? The different colors of wood give you the variety. So that's what makes the bouquet. I mean, you never find 2 flowers the same, identical. Basically, all this is spindle turning. It will, because
No, it was on the
you don't want to do that. It dulls the gouge.
like home, you know. It's just a little bit of
I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, sandpaper is my friend. I can blend things with the sandpaper where I don't have the skills with the gouge or the skew. Really, that's all there is to turning that. Now, how do I get this out of here? Try just point it out. A 1/4-inch hole. I can't pull this out of here because it's jammed on. And there you have an excuse for a flower. Put it under the camera.
pass around.
Yeah.
Do you ever do the inside?
Well, what I do, no, I never turn the inside. What I do with the insides, and I pre-turn this. Everybody knows how to make a diameter. I put a center in these. I usually use a contrasting wood. I think this one is maple. This one was, I think this one was some kind of Bolivian rosewood, Murado maybe.
Red.
Kind of got to fit it up there to see how far you want to, how far it's going to go in. And if I had a pencil, I would mark it, but that's okay. One of the things I've learned when you're parting it, put a little chamfer on the bottom so it slides in this piece better. Well, I was going to super glue it in, but this really needs to be sanded a little bit first. And there you have kind of a completed flower. Put a little stem on it, and I glue the stem on, and then after it's glued on, I use this florist tape I get at Hobby Lobby or Lobby Hobby, whatever
Or
it is.
Michael's.
Or Michael's. This was 2 rolls for $2, $1.99. So it's really not expensive. You just twist it on.
Do
Do you always use a straight stick for the stem?
I do. I didn't know about another stick that Paul's going to have. It's straight, but it's already colored. So it's a real nice option. The other thing is when you show these, what I like to do is put some florist foam inside. I usually use a wide mouth. Put some florist foam in there, and that way I can shove these down in there and they're not going to move all over the place. Really, that's all there is to it.
Mike, did you say how you cut the petals before you turn?
Yeah. When I cut the petals on the block of wood, I usually come down halfway, draw a line, and then in the center of that line that I've drawn, I put a mark, and then from the ends or wherever, sometimes I come a ½ inch in and draw a diagonal down to that, put it on the bandsaw and just cut. And I do that 2 times and I've got something like this. Any other questions? Okay, make flowers. Peace out, everybody.
That are going to be passed out, or that were passed out, and I had no problems making a tulip that looked like Michael's. Yeah, with a diamond in front, you know. That's the ray portion of everything. Everything's got to have something that glitters. So that was what that is. And then this one here has got the tulip pieces sticking out. And inside for the stamen, I have something yellow, but that is actually a natural piece, and that is a piece of stem tomato that has been painted yellow. So if you're getting stem tomatoes, dry out the stems, and you can use them for stamens and pistils inside. Pipe cleaners work. This one's got a, where am I? This one's, I just curled it around one of the sticks and then put it in there. And then this one here that's orangey yellow, that was just some transparent red spray, airbrush paint that I diluted down and wiped down. And I'll pass these around. I have no problems passing these around. Anyhow, to get started on these things, I know that everybody can turn a cylinder. They can put a simple tenon on something if they need to. So that's a pretty simple thing. Holes, everybody knows how to drill a hole. Paul was stupid, didn't look at the drill bit when he stuck it in, so that one's going to be a little bit bigger inside. That's what light does to you. Brain farts. And if you're doing it, you end up putting it in your chuck, and I use the cone center to keep it centered, just like we did with the other flowers. Things you don't want to do. Red oak I love red oak, but they're really flimsy. They tend to split quite a bit. There's the gaps. When I cut it, it ended up splitting. It was horrible. And then this is my favorite one. It's a piece of elm. It became a rain barrel with no bottom. So things you got to watch out for when you're doing this. The tools that I ended up making or doing for this was a template, and I don't know, yeah, there we go, a template to get 5 sides. Now 5 sides are pretty easy to do, but you got to know the math. And so it's pi, which is a radius of the circle, which in this case was 5 inches, so the radius is 2.5, times 1.17 equals the side length, or the chord across the pentagon. So, and I use this one when I'm using the larger flowers. And from that I made this piece here, and which has got 5 marks equally around it. And I use that in the cone center to mark my pieces. So with that, we're going to do the simple one first. And this happens to be a piece of pecan. I'm going to just tighten it up in the chuck. some of you may have spindle locks on your chucks. Some of you, I know I have a spindle lock, but it doesn't work with, because I got to put pins in the holes here to lock it. So what I did is took a band clamp, which is why the band clamp is here. And in order to lock my spindle, I'll wrap it around here. And we're not turning it on, so we're good. Yeah, it'll only slow it down till it throws it right. So those of you who have indexing and can use the indexer to clamp, that's great. If you don't, oh well. So this is the guide that I use for finding out where my 5 petals are going to go. And one of the things that if you have a bad spot on here, and I'm just going to take a mark. I'll take a pencil here. I got a marker in my pocket here. And somewhere I've got a pencil too. So I've got a bad spot right here. And I want to get rid of that. So the easiest way to get rid of that is make sure that I don't have it on the line, because that's going to be the very tip of my pedal, and so my part is going to show up. So by rotating that bad spot, so it's roughly 50% of the distance around, I'm not going to have that in my pedal. It's going to come out. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put a tiny little mark. And I guess we're going to rotate this way, because I still don't have it quite as tight as I would like. Yeah, turn the switch. There you go. So I got my marks. And from there, I'm going to put a line across. And if I didn't bring it, I forgot. Brain farts again, that's what happens when you've got other things going on. And you're just going to draw a line across. And that's going to be part of where the entire pedal is going to go. Draw it across. So you got 5 of these. And if you're perfectly straight, that's great. If you're perfectly little crooked, it's not going to make any difference. Again, as Mike said, every flower is different. So I know my hole depth is 2 1/4, 2 3/8, 2 1/8, something in that range. So I'm going to measure over 1 inch, and I'm just going to say it's 1 knuckle. So it's right there. And I'm going to draw another line. That's another reference line. And then roughly where the bottom of that hole is, that's going to be another reference line. So now I got 2 centers, or 2 lines, 2 places to go. The next thing you're going to do is locate a spot that's roughly in between on that first line. And you're going to rotate that around. And that one. That one. So now this is the top, the part of the pedal that's no good. I'm just going to draw a line, excluding that portion, because that's got a bad defect in the top. It's called a red dot. I'm going to just draw my pedals in here. Now there's several ways of cutting these petals. Unfortunately, I am the manual method because I don't have a Dremel saw, a little Dremel tool to do it. So if you have a Dremel tool and you you can't spindle lock it, you better do something, because that's going to make it very, very dangerous to do. And just keep drawing them out. I should have stopped a long time ago, but I didn't. Okay. So now I got my petals, and I'm going to just pick that center line from each petal, and I'm going to go down to the next line. Because you're going to make a cut all the way down to there too. And eventually you're going to sand all this stuff off anyway. So we're out of there. We got that all well marked out. there. I'm just going to pass that piece around, and we're going to end up doing the bigger, the one with the other hole in it. What's going to end up being a flared one, so I'll mark that one and cut it. They're going to cut exactly the same way, but I won't bore you with. I don't want to toss this one because this is actually pretty good. You can take that one. Able to use that pin very easily to mark my centers or my lines. So basically I'm going to use my guide here. And I'll rotate it. To match it. And so I have it roughly centered there. Again, I'm just going to use the dots that I had before. This one's maple. This cut's really nice. And I know some of you folks have done this before because I know Roger has demonstrated dividing things out and other things like that. So it's a pretty straightforward process. And I'm only going to draw a couple of the lines on here and then actually do a little cutting. And I think this time before I tighten it down, I'm going to do my marks because it's easier. Again, we're just going to put the pencil on here and actually just draw the lines across. Roughly about an inch, roughly near the bottom. And I'm just going to draw in a couple of petals here, the center, the spot in between. And I'm just going to draw a couple of petals, and I'm actually going to cut these for you, how I've been doing it. And again, my petals, sometimes they come out a little further before they start curving, and other times they don't. It's going to be your design, and the only thing that's right is what you do. What I'm doing is not your design. Your design is not my design. And eventually we're going to cut all the way down to here. So, get this bad boy up here because it's pretty hard to hold this and keep it from spinning while you're cranking down with a saw. So. Where it is.
Hey, Paul, either zoom out or move your camera just a touch. Can't see the end.
Can't see the end of it? We'll move the lathe.
You can do that too. That's good. Perfect.
Again, I could use this, but then I got to transfer marks all the way around, so it's just easier to use that other little template. And one more thing about sanding, because all of you have to sand the inside of it. What I do is I take blue paper, I fold it, and draw a piece about 3 inches wide, wrap it around, clamp my sandpaper on. I'll insert it in the hole, and I'm not holding on to the hemostats with my fingers here. Now, something this small, you might get away with it. Anything big, you're not going to. So make sure you sand before you do anything, any of that too. It's in the instructions. Right on here. And my first cut, I'm going to be looking at, I'm going to cut this one here. And it's not, and I think a Dremel tool, if you had one, is going to be easier because you're going to get these cuts nice and straight. Ooh, I'm thin there, very thin. And I'm going to rotate it, And I've got the other side. And I know I'm thin, so I'm going to support it. There it goes, I broke it out. And you're going to end up cutting this whole thing down in here. And I can't do that right now because I'm going to get the other, I'm going to actually go and do this one and that side, because then you can see how I start the sanding on it. It's really thin. I got it a little thin there. All right, now I got those two petals, and I can actually go down part of the center here, and if I'm really good and watch what I'm doing, I'm pretty close to the end there.
Paul, is that, are the teeth on that, is that on a push stroke or a pull stroke?
It's on a pole.
Okay.
And at that point, I'd have all of them cut, and I would take my sandpaper, and I'm using cloth. Got to use cloth. And I'm going to go through both halves, and I'm going to do a little sand.
What grit?
When I got that done, I would do the other side. And I keep doing.
What grit?
Pardon?
What grit?
I'm starting out with 150, but whatever works. But it's got to be cloth because the paper's going to shred. And then you're going to end up just going between the two of them, and you're going to end up with a really nice flower shape in here. And you'll end up with that particular one, you're going to end up with this shape here. So when you have more of a cone shape, you're going to have the smaller opening. When you flare it out, you get the opening. As far as the sticks go, I bought the sticks at Michael's. Somewhere there's a package over here.
You drill the stem hole before you part the flower off?
No, I'll tell you. I got these sticks over at Michael's. You're going to have to measure each one of them. I think they're about 5-30 seconds, I think, is something like that, is what works. And what I usually will do is I'm going to drill press, I'm going to put a 1/16 of an inch hole in the bottom, all the way through, because that's where my stamen is going to go. If I'm using a pipe cleaner, that works. If I'm using the tomato piece, from the stem tomatoes, you're going to have to measure that, because that's going to be a different drill size. And then I drill whatever size it is necessary for this, and then I hot glue it in. What I'm going to experiment with is this with these. I'm going to soak a couple of them and see if I can bend them in a little bit of a form with a plane. I think you can do it. And then you can have a little bit of a bend into your flowers. Any questions? Man, I explained everything. Unbelievable.
Good job.
Very good.
All right.